authorities are still investigating the Uvalde, Texas shooting, but they do know that the shooter reportedly used social media to post disturbing images and wrote in a Facebook message of his plans to attack Robb Elementary School 15 minutes before he did so, killing 19 children and 2 adults. So was there anything that authorities or the Facebook platform could have done to stop the threat once his message was sent? Well, joining me now is Lena Derhally, licensed psychotherapist and author of The Facebook Narcissist. Lena, thanks for coming on. What is the responsibility that Facebook or other social media platforms played in the deadly tragic shooting that we saw earlier this week?
Well, first of all, they don't take enough responsibility for what they actually know, which is that divisive content and racist and hateful content drive engagement. So they're not really invested in taking down hateful content. In regards to the shooting, it was 15 minutes before that actual threat. It would be pretty hard for a social media company to trace that threat that quickly. But what they can do better is take down threats and hateful content much faster and more than they're doing now. It's not something that's a huge priority for them.
So it is interesting, and I'm not sure how much of an expert you are when it comes to Facebook. I know you have this book out called The Facebook Narcissist, but Facebook has invested heavily, at least on a dollar and head count amount. They've hired a lot of people to basically police the platform and take down what they deem as inappropriate content, even though some would say a lot of content still exists on the platform that shouldn't live there in the first place, even after review. So any indication as to whether or not someone at Facebook would have seen this post before the deadly shooting actually took place?
Again, with 15 minutes before, I don't think that they would have been able to, well, one, flag it that quickly, but two, if the shooter didn't say exactly where he was going, then they would have to determine in a very short amount of time what school was he going to and getting the proper people out there. So I think in that situation, it's a little bit too hard to track. However, a lot of these mass shooters have had warning signs and been posting things on social media even way before they actually perform and carry out their heinous act. So I think that the Facebook actually could do a better job. And also we can pass some legislature that would flag these people a lot earlier than they have been.
As a licensed psychotherapist and author of The Facebook Narcissist, Lena, what are the warning signs on Facebook and other social media platforms that a violent or hateful act may ensue?
Yeah, so I've been using the example of this particular shooter out of Uvalde. Now, he was chatting with a young woman on some apps, a week or so before this, and he was bragging about throwing dead cats at houses. He was, posting pictures of his guns, and he had been getting in fights and making threats before this. And so I think, if we have something called these red flag laws, which are being talked about right now, people could report somebody like that and as a threat. And so even with a threat, they could report that to anybody. And then that person could have, visit to their home and have their weapons confiscated. And then they would be blocked from buying future weapons. So I think that that's something that we really need to pay attention to when we're looking at social media's role in these crimes.
Now, is that something, Lena, that you think can actually pass and be effective on a federal level? Or do you think it has a more optimistic possibility on a state-by-state basis?
I mean, I wish I knew the answer to that. I am optimistic that we have to do something. Unfortunately, we have about 350 million guns in this country, and it doesn't look like they're going anywhere. My firstborn child was 3 months old when Sandy Hook happened, and I know myself and many other parents are just so defeated at this point. And so I think we're willing to try anything. And even if it stops, a few more of these, it's something. And so I think we just have to start thinking outside the box.
So the shooter, now dead in the wake of that tragic mass shooting at the elementary school, he reportedly had no history of mental health issues or even a criminal history, according to the press conference that we got from Governor Greg Abbott yesterday. But we do see more than a billion users, billions of users of Facebook, for instance, in social media around the world. Other countries have mental health challenges as well. Why is it the case that in the U.S., these tragic events happen much more often?
Well, again, it's access to guns. And, these people, they have narcissistic and antisocial tendencies, which we can't conflate with mental health issues. Now, these mass shooters are usually very narcissistic and often sadistic, meaning they have no empathy. They're completely entitled and they have no problem taking the life of somebody else. And so when they feel humiliated and they want to take revenge, there's absolutely nothing that's going to stop them in terms of, depression and anxiety. That's a completely different thing. Now, we can also talk about anti-bullying because a lot of these mass shooters have been bullied. And if they have these antisocial tendencies and they're provoked, that's something that they're going to think about and be much more likely to do. So in addition to the role of this access to guns that we have, we're also not doing enough to understand that there is a huge difference between a mental health issue and somebody who's potentially a sociopath or a psychopath.
Lena Derhally, licensed psychotherapist and author of the Facebook Narcissist. Lena, thank you so much for coming on and tackling a very sad story for us here today.